Good day, everyone. This is All Fronts Weather, and this is our Alaska forecast for the week starting on the 8th of September. Now, there are going to be three major features impacting the state of Alaska today into this next week. The first, on the southwest part of the imagery right now, is going to be the remnants of a tropical storm. This is still going to be bringing some pretty high wind speeds throughout the next couple of days in the central and western Aleutians. And going into Wednesday and Thursday, it's going to start impacting the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Next, we have high pressure that's setting in to the southern and southeastern Gulf over today. And finally, we have a long Arctic stationary front along the northern part of the state, still bringing some steady rainfall and potentially some snow showers going into the end of this week. Now, looking at our current hazards and future hazards, the dark or bright purple along the central and eastern Aleutians is going to be for a storm warning. That is going to be winds in excess of 64 knots. And this is going to be associated with the western side of that dying tropical storm or very strong low pressure system that we're seeing. The other purple regions in the Bering and along the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula is going to be for a gale warning. Once again, these are going to be higher winds, over 35 knots. Over towards the Gulf, we're going to see some small craft advisories, and those are also going to be in the western Aleutians and northern Bering. And for the Panhandle coast, we do have a special weather advisory or statement that was issued, and that is going to be for some pretty high winds expected midweek around Wednesday or Thursday. As we travel north towards Kotzebue, that yellow area is going to be for a flood watch, and it will be in effect for the next few days with some steady rainfall. And along the Arctic coast and around the Brooks Range, we are going to be expecting some pretty heavy snow accumulation along that Arctic stationary front. For our winds aloft, this is around 34,000 feet. We can see strong cyclonic rotation providing support for the low pressure system that's going to be impacting the Bering and Aleutians today into the rest of this week. The high pressure support that used to be a very strong ridge earlier last week has become more discontinuous, and we're going to see that the high pressure in the Gulf is going to start receding to the south and southeast. This is going to allow the low pressure system to rapidly push across the Aleutians and settle into the south and southeast of Kodiak Island by around Thursday or Friday. To the Arctic region of the state, we can see a small trough coming off of Russia towards the Bering Strait. This is going to provide more instability to that region, which is going to allow those snowstorms and snow showers to continue and allow that accumulation of snow along the Brooks Range and Arctic coast into Thursday and Friday of this week. Being in Alaska, we're blessed with the ability to see two different surface analysis charts. One's going to be issued by the OPC with NOAA, and the other is actually issued directly by the NWS. For the OPC chart with NOAA, we do get a little bit more detailed information for areas such as troughs or ridges and things such as the ice sheet up in the Arctic and how that affects the Bering. But as we can see on here, it doesn't extend very far south. It cuts off right around the central and eastern Aleutians. It doesn't really extend and show us anything to the south of that. But despite that, we can still see the low pressure and how tight the isobars and the pressure is with that low. And we can also see that it's going to be tracking very rapidly to the east, and that X just to the south of the Alaska Peninsula is where it's going to settle in tomorrow. We are also expecting the remnants of a cold front in the central Gulf to continue swinging through to the east to impact the Panhandle going into tonight. Probably going to be expecting a decent bit of rain due to that, but it's going to be impacting more of the northern coast of the Panhandle and northern Gulf due to that higher pressure that's still there. Going into the central part of the state and the Arctic, we could see a few different low pressure systems being stamped right now. Most of these are going to be associated with a stationary front, but we're still going to be expecting pretty consistent snow showers and rain showers Pretty much anything to the south of the Bering Strait is going to be rain, and anything to the north is likely going to be snow. Now we can see with the NWS chart that we do get a little bit more of an easy to digest way of conveying the information here. We have moisture fields with rain, mist, snow, and we also get to see a little bit further to the south with our area of impact here. So the low pressure is currently at 986 millibars as of the morning of the 8th of September. Very, very tight in isobars, especially on the western end of this low pressure. But we also have a very short warm front and a pretty strong cold front extending through the south here. We're going to be expecting this low pressure to be traveling to the east at around 20 knots. Once again, it's going to be settling in to the south of the Alaska Peninsula going into tomorrow. And for our long stationary front along the northern part of the state, we can see that on the southern side of that cold front, we're going to be expecting mainly rain showers and mist, while on the northern side of that, we're going to be expecting snow showers. Now, going back to our strong Aleutian low, we're going to see that Monday morning it's pretty close to Adak and Atka, but it's going to rapidly transition to the south of the Alaska Peninsula, as said previously. Going in Tuesday morning, we're going to be expecting our very strong winds. On the eastern side of that low, they're going to be coming from the south, but on the western side, they're going to be coming from the north. Now, for both of these differing areas of wind, potential for wind shear at the low level is very possible for our aviators. Winds coming from the south on the eastern side are going to be centered pretty close to False Pass and Sand Point, and gap winds are going to be a very strong possibility on the northern side of the Alaska Peninsula. The NWS is showing wind speeds in excess of around 48 knots. However, a lot of the models I'm seeing, and I will show later, are showing winds in excess of 55 to 60 knots. On the western side of that low along the eastern Aleutians, we're still going to be expecting those strong northerly winds, and surprisingly enough, the wind speeds that I'm seeing are strongest on the western side of this low. So the southern side of the eastern Aleutians are going to be a very strong hazard for those gap winds and low-level mechanical turbulence. On screen right now is the high-resolution rapid refresh Alaska model. This model is just a high-resolution GFS for all intents and purposes. It's around 6 nautical miles for resolution compared to the GFS is 22. The time period for this model run is also at around 2 p.m. Tuesday, the 9th of September. And we can see with those yellow areas within the green on the eastern and central Aleutians that wind speeds are going to be pretty close, if not exceeding 60 knots in some areas. Now, this is at 10 meters from the surface, so surface winds may be quite a bit lower, maybe down to around 50 to 55 knots in some areas. However, the fact remains that high wind speeds are going to be expected, especially on the western side of this low. Now, with the cold front extending down to the south, we still are going to be expecting wind speeds in excess of 40 knots as well with those green areas, and those are going to help promote very strong gap winds along the Alaska Peninsula. Once again, near Unimak Pass, Cold Bay, False Pass. So all of those areas into the areas to the north, gap winds are going to be a very strong factor. Looking ahead to Tuesday morning on our significant weather chart issued by the NWS and NOAA, we can see that the low pressure is actually marginally improving strength from 986 down to 982 millibars and centering to the south of the Alaska Peninsula. Those dotted areas along the central and eastern Aleutians, Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet, and Bristol Bay are going to be for low-level turbulence. So aviators in these areas should definitely take heed and use caution. The tight isobars are still going to remain a very strong factor, bringing some very strong wind speeds to the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. For those areas, the winds are going to be coming from the north now instead of from the south. So, largest area of concern, once again, for mechanical turbulence and gap winds are going to be on the southern side of the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. For Kodiak Island, they're going to be expecting strong southerly winds. However, for the terrain in Kodiak, most of the time the clouds are going to be lifted before it reaches the actual town and airfield for the island. For the rest of the Gulf, we're going to be expecting the low-lying clouds and a majority of the rain to be behind the triple point. However, going into Tuesday afternoon, areas such as the Panhandle and Northern Gulf are going to be impacted by that warm front, bringing some steady rain. Now, finally looking ahead towards Wednesday morning, we can see that the low is slowly starting to break apart. We have part of that low now in the northeastern interior as a trough linking into another low in Canada, and the isobars are slowly starting to diminish their tightness. Still going to be expecting strong northerly winds along the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians, but we have a higher pressure system starting to push into the Bering, and that's going to help provide support pushing that low pressure towards the eastern Gulf and then towards British Columbia. While this occurs, though, we still are going to be expecting that occluded front to be impacting the Gulf Coast and Panhandle. That's going to be bringing some low-level turbulence to those areas, along with very low-lying clouds. These clouds are likely going to be around 700, 750 feet, according to some of the model QTs available by the NWS. However, at around 3 days, 4 days out, these QTs and models are not the most reliable. Now, although weather in Alaska seems fairly bleak with our strong winds and rain to the south and steady snowfall to the north, we must take the good with the bad. The summer months so far have been very nice to Alaska with long periods of sunshine, and thankfully this low pressure system is going to rapidly push through and weaken in the Gulf. We are also going to be expecting that high pressure to set in directly behind that low, bringing another day or two of sunshine to the state, just behind where everyone's going to be experiencing the heavier weather. But with that long stationary front to the north, we are also expecting a full transition into fall, with colder temperatures expected not too far behind or too far into the future here. But this has been All France Weather with our Alaska forecast. Please let us know if you'd like to see more specific forecasting, such as Alaska or the Pacific Northwest, or if you'd rather see things more like all of CONUS and the large-scale weather features that are impacting the entire country. Thank you for watching.